Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the East Riding of Yorkshire series. Together with the unparished city of Hull, it forms the county of the same name. There's 172 parishes here. Which one are we in today? Welcome back to the East Riding of Yorkshire, everybody. Now then, we are in the vicinity of Hornsea once again. Now, do you remember the Sigglesthorne episode from a few weeks ago? This is its neighbour, and this is the one that shares most of Sigglesthorne's amenities. This is Seaton. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Welcome back to Hornsea, everyone. Well, nearly. Although not quite Hornsea itself, the parish of Seaton touches the popular East Yorkshire seaside town thanks to the western fringes of Hornsea Mere. Once again, we're on the A1035. Seaton should not be confused, of course, with Seaton Ross, also an East Yorkshire village, which we covered some time ago. This one also contains the hamlets of Catfoss, which will actually be covered in a future episode, and Wassand, which is where you'll find a big hall. Seaton was once a tiny hamlet, heavily reliant on agriculture. It happily minded its own business in that way until the 19th century, when Hull draper John Maw added several cottages in the village, expanding it somewhat. Maw lived at Seaton House, the village's standout property. Seaton still remains today an agricultural village. In fact, if you know where to look, there are clues. The obvious ones are farmyards, but the old village post office also houses the office of an agronomy company, J.K. Senior and Sons. Seaton can also boast a village hall, a pub, a mere and a war memorial. There's also an old primitive Methodist chapel too. This is a village passed over by many who just drive through on the way to Hornsea. They should stop for a while and have a look at it. That's what I did, and backed by the fresh sea breeze blowing from Hornsea, it was delightful. Let's go, people! We begin on Bremer Lane to the west of the main village cluster. There's a green space here, which we'll be coming back to further along this route. Seaton consists of 6 main streets laid out in a gridded rectangle, although as we'll see, Main Street is a bit more bendy. Middle Lane is as straight as a die. Most of Seaton is lined with terraced cottages typical of the East Riding, as well as several farms and their outbuildings. More modern housing infills the gaps. Whitty's Paddock is a good example of that more modern housing on the end of Middle Lane. Once a tiny hamlet in the 1800s, Seaton was said to have been much improved by John Maw of Seaton House. He was a draper from Hull and built several new cottages in the village in the mid-19th century. Further improvements were then made by his successor, William P. Maw. One of the cottages was used as an infant school in 1840, but these days there's no school here. Seaton's children attend school in Sigglesthorne. Okay, now to head down Back Lane, where, as you can see, all the houses are on one side of the road. On the other side, it's a field, but there is a footpath which runs through that field, and I'll be coming back to this kind of area very shortly. If you follow Back Lane, it takes you towards a mere. Back Lane is once again another dead straight affair with brick cottages on one side. As well as that field, there's a small cluster of farm buildings at the other end. Back to Bremer Lane, here we've got Seaton's Mere. Whilst it might not be as impressive as Hornsea Mere just a couple of miles away, I found this to be quite pretty. On one side of it is Seaton's War Memorial. It takes the form of an elongated metal bench. There's no entry on IWM for this, I'm afraid, for all the folks out there who like to read about war memorials. Next to it there's a flagpole with the British flag flying proudly in the gentle summer morning breeze. The road we're on here, Bremer Lane, runs north towards Catfoss and then on to Nunkeeling, a small hamlet within the parish of Bewholme. It once had a priory. Religious buildings in Seaton, though, have historically been less important. There's no church, but there is a former primitive Methodist chapel. It's seen here, and it dates from 1837. So as nice as that area is, where the mere is, that's not defined as the village green. This is defined as the village green, believe it or not. It doesn't look much like a green, it's just a big triangle of land, basically opposite where the Methodist chapel is. There's a couple of benches here. But to be fair, even though there's not a lot here, it's nice and peaceful. Now I'm not going to stay here for long because, as you can see, that farmhouse over there, I need to go sort of beyond that towards that footpath I was talking about. To get back to the main village cluster from here means following Nicholson Lane, a narrow farm track which rejoins Bewholme Lane at its junction with Back Lane. Bewholme Lane leads to the A1035. At the corner where they meet is a little white cottage, which I found quite cute. The only drawback it has is that it stands on the A1035, which as we know can be quite noisy. Even so, buses stop here, and the two that serve Seaton are the 24 and 25, both of which go to Hornsea. Partially hidden behind one of the bus shelters is a black wooden building. This is the Seaton and Sigglesthorne Recreation Hall, the community centre shared by both villages. And you'll recall Sigglesthorne has no pub, but Seaton does. This is the Swan Inn, which provides both villages with a local watering hole. Google lists this as permanently closed, but its Facebook page suggests it's alive and well. It was forced to close for a couple of days in 2018 though. The horrifying reason why is linked in an article below. Okay, once you get back past the pub, you are then on a bend, and this bend winds its way through Seaton. You can see there's some houses on the other side of the road. Not really much of interest, I don't think, although there is something there. There's a bit of writing there that I can't quite read from here, but I'll go across the road and have a look at that in a moment. What I am going to do is put a card on the parish notice board, which is right behind me at the moment, and then we'll carry on back to the car. The lettering I could see said Agronomy and Buying Group, and it's an office, the base of a company called J.K. Senior and Sons. It occupies Seaton's former post office. Agronomy, for those interested, is a branch of agriculture that deals with field crop production and soil management. Agronomists generally work with crops that are grown on a large scale. And given the number of farms in Seaton, it would seem crops are very important out here. Here's the yard at Manor Farm, which is directly opposite Seaton Manor. Its name is confusing. Although called Seaton Manor now, this was Seaton House, the property in which John Maw once resided. It's a Grade 2 listed building and was built in the early 19th century of light grey brick. Now valued at over £800,000, Seaton Manor is the most expensive property in the village and dominates the corner of Bremer Lane. As well as the farm, Seaton Manor also gives its name to Manor Park, and that's where our walk comes to a close. And with that, we're back to where we began on Manor Park. Now, that's been Seaton Village, but also within Seaton Parish is something called Wassand Hall, or Wassand Hall. Now, I can't access that because it is private. However, special sections were designed for a reason. To the southeast of Seaton is Wassand, a small hamlet which contains Wassand Hall, a large regency house which overlooks the enormous Hornsea Mere. It was designated a Grade 2 listed building in 1952. Hornsea Mere is actually part of its estate, and that has been in the possession of the Constable family since about 1520. During World War II, the house was requisitioned by the army and was used by the Free French. The constables would reclaim the hall after the war. Ownership passed to Lady Ernestine Strickland Constable in 1975. Upon her death in 1995, the estate became held by her great-nephew, Rupert Russell, who resides at Wassand Hall with his wife Catherine. The house which stands today is not the original. It was rebuilt in 1815, the original house having been demolished because it had fallen into disrepair. The house is not open full-time to the public, but details of open days can be found on Wassand Hall's very own website, linked below. It's worth noting that Wassand also had a railway station, but that falls within a different parish. However, that's not the one we're heading for right now. Instead, we're off to see the sea. Meet me back here next week to see exactly where I'm enjoying the North Sea from as we continue along the coast. See you later. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.